Yeah, and I think we can actually go ahead and start live stream. We do have 6 board members present, 7:05.
Okay. Just give me 1 second here, Colin. I'm having the same error that I did last time.
Maybe our last virtual meeting, so. Was it that it's still uploading the SPED committee meeting?
Was there a SPED committee meeting right before this, or?
Oh, I
No,
thought
that
it was.
an hour ago.
Yeah, no,
Oh.
I don't think that's the case. So,
Okay, sorry. Never mind.
Yeah,
Stop
no.
trying to blame SPED, Colin.
One of these days.
Did anyone get outside and enjoy the weather today?
From the window. It's
You
look-
got that nice big window, Alex, so.
yeah, it's looking great from here.
Taunting you.
What you said, Alan?
It's taunting you. It's like,
Oh, kids are having fun. I get to see our students playing baseball all the time.
oh,
so,
nice.
Oh, yeah, they play over in the little field, yeah,
yeah,
nice.
I want to walk like they walk out there. Never find the time.
Isn't that something? I know.
Track has gotten a lot of use this year.
Oh yes, it's pretty. There's a few people out there today.
Mhm. We had a
Nicole.
really nice curriculum meeting, really good meeting.
Good.
Oh, wait, was
Yes.
there a curriculum meeting before this?
Not
and-
right
That's
before,
why you're having the
it
problem.
was an hour ago.
No. That's good. Thank you, though. So, hang on, because it did say there was something still streaming. Thank you.
Was
Okay, so we can call the meeting.
yeah, I
that
think
was at
curriculum
4
ended at-
though, Ralph.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says
Wait a
it
minute.
did say it ended. So, okay.
I I heard the calling the meeting to order.
Yeah. That's good.
I thought I heard your voice, Sherelle.
I know, I was like, no. I was so flustered because I had to change my password and then I couldn't remember it
Oh,
to get into the emails and I was like, oh God, so I had to rush home.
Here's Suzanne.
hi, Suzanne.
Hi, it's good to be here. I was waiting with circles saying connecting, connecting, connecting. Not connecting. Yay.
You're not in your void anymore.
I know. I've been upgraded.
Good.
Mhm.
Good. Ralph, let me know if it's easier for us to just get started and we can,
Yeah, I
fine.
mean, I know, like I said, from a legal standpoint, we are correct in doing this. I can post it in it like a little bit later. We're recording it locally, so everything's working and people can log in to it. So let's get going, and then I'm going to just keep playing with it, and hopefully it'll fix itself like it did in the last one during the pledge. So
It'll fix itself. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Ralph, for helping us with that. And so why don't we at 7:12 call tonight's board workshop to order. Welcome, everyone. We have 7 board members present and several school staff present. So we can go right into the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Ralph.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, one nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ralph. And I want to say a special thank you to Isaiah, Jackson, and Zariah, who from Tracy School, who led us in that pledge tonight. So I hope we can continue that even when we start meeting in person. Anywho, so tonight is a board workshop. Tonight we're going to hear about the new strategic plan that's been in the works for several months. And to get us started, I'm going to kick it over to Superintendent Dr. Estrella.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Today is a really important day because we're going to start discussing the strategic framework, where we are in the scope of the work, but most importantly, where we are as we continue to transition into the work ahead for the district. We've had a really intensive past few months looking at and listening to the needs and priorities of the district to clearly identify our work in the next few years. But most importantly, we looked at where the great work that has already taken place and the work that we need to continue to focus on to continue to strengthen NPS and move it to the next level. So today we have Dr. Richard Lemons, who will present today some of the findings from the task force. And this work didn't happen in isolation. Obviously, it constituted the collaboration of students, family members, our staff, as well as community members, many of the legislative officials, and the accumulation of all of this information allowed us to really identify the areas of focus and areas that we want to prioritize as a community to further support the needs of our students. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lemons, who will provide us with the initial findings of the strategic framework. And we're hoping to continue to solicit feedback from the board and then get the approval of the board to then continue moving the work forward and looking at the more finite details of what we need to focus on, particularly year one, to launch the work for the district based on what we have found.
Good evening. It is my honor to be with you. I feel like I am representing in front of the board both the Connecticut Center for School Change, but also a pretty spectacular task force that has been working together for 4 months now coming together most Thursday evenings and working deep into the evening, having big conversations about the students of Norwalk and the future of the school district. And it's been exciting, and it's been hard work, and it's been exhausting. And along the way, I think we've produced something very important, and we bring it to you humbly, but also with a bit of pride. So I'm going to bring up my screen in service of sharing some context, some of that you've heard before. How did we get to this point? And then we're going to talk you through particular parts of the strategic framework that have emerged. Pause after each one, solicit any ideas and reactions, and then we'll move methodically to the next artifact, and then we can step back from the entirety and see if there are any other comments, suggestions from the board. So let me bring up my screen. So starting back in December, actually, when the board interviewed, or members of the board interviewed the Connecticut Center for School Change, you made it very clear that you wanted an efficient process that took stock of the current needs and assets of the district. And then you wanted to move through into the creation of important documents that would guide, that would ground you in the work going forward. And then ultimately by the spring, we would emerge with broad goal areas that would provide a framework. So that's what we're bringing to you tonight, with one little caveat. We'll explain that caveat, which is actually quite a bit exciting. We knew that along the way, and this came from that conversation and conversations in January when we were working through the details of how to proceed, that there were a number of entities that were very important for making this work. We knew that you as the board were kind of commissioning us to move forward. You gave us the authority as a task force to begin to do this planning. You created the parameters, and ultimately you're receiving recommendations to consider for adoption. And that's partially what we come to you tonight for. The task force did just an amazing amount of work, just in terms of quantity, but that doesn't capture the quality of the work that they did. And I think you're going to see that represented this evening. They worked within the parameters that you had helped to set. They worked hard to understand the perspective of the community, helping to guide focus groups, helping to design a survey, actually multiple surveys, helping to represent different constituent groups in the room when we were having the task force, and working quite hard in drafting components of a plan, debating big ideas, and even wordsmithing prepositional phrases, as you can imagine how difficult that can be in a tight time frame. But another part was very critical to you, and I heard this back in December. You wanted this process to engage the community. You did not want 2 or 3 people or a small group to lock itself or themselves into a room for the weekend and crank out a plan, which could have happened that way. You wanted to make sure that insight and input was solicited and provided from stakeholder groups, and you wanted it to be broad, and you wanted it to be deep. And we've done that along the way. There are multiple points where we've reached out to constituent groups through survey, through focus group, through interview, and then even gone back and solicited more feedback. So we're excited about that. And a huge thank you. Anybody who's listening in this evening from the community, if you were a part of any part of this process, if you took the call and came to an evening and participated in our focus groups, as hundreds did on 2 different occasions, if you showed up for one of the briefings and provided survey data or input, even in a chat function, there has not been a meeting that we have had with a stakeholder group where the plan did not shift the very next day because of feedback. I can say that with confidence and a lot of truthfulness, because this has been a very iterative process, and we've listened carefully to the community and trying to understand what the big messages were, and to make sure that what we were developing in a framework represented those big messages. So the first part of our process as a task force was to conduct a needs assessment. And this part, even though it looks as if it's a small portion of this arrow, it actually represented the majority of the weeks that we worked together. We were operating under the principle that the biggest challenge is understanding the problem you're trying to solve, not seeking out the solutions to solve it. And it's only after you understand the problem you're trying to solve, the full context that you're dealing with, that you can have clarity about where to move after that. So we spent quite a bit of time in the needs assessment phase that involved the task force conducting a SWOT analysis. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically an analysis of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats of the organization. We solicited feedback from the community. We ran interviews, we ran focus groups in an initial wave. Then we did an analysis of that, and we identified another set of questions that we thought were critical to bring out to the community. And then we had 2 just brilliant evenings of focus groups where dozens of focus groups were run and hundreds of participants played a role, lended us your expertise, lended us your voice, lended us your experience, and we're all the better for it. Then we moved into taking all of that information. Oh, with one other piece that I skipped past. We also used in the needs assessment the input that was emerging from multiple studies that were going on simultaneously throughout the organization: the disproportionality study, the facility study, the special education study, the capacity and coherence review. And all of those were important other sources of data and evidence that we brought into the needs assessment. Then the task force moved over the last several weeks into beginning to write, beginning to build, beginning to design, actively planning as a result and as an outgrowth of the needs assessment. We spent quite a bit of time on mission. You're going to see a draft of that. We worked quite a bit on vision, but we actually have a counter proposal instead of the task force to develop it. We have an idea about students. We'll talk more about that to come. We have an articulation of core values, those kind of cultural tenets that we want to define the work of Norwalk Public Schools. And we also have a strategic framework, a collection of broad goal areas that can define the future work of the district. We're not yet at a place, and we didn't anticipate being, we're exactly where we thought we would be by May, which was the framework. There's work that will come after tonight that's really important. It's very exciting, and it could only come after we've gotten to the framework, which is to identify the actual strategies, to identify the measures of success, to identify time frames for implementing, and begin to look for into the work for multiple years, but also to drill into what's the work for 2021 and 22, which is exceptionally exciting. So just we pulled together this slide to give you a sense of all the work the task force did on behalf of the board, on behalf of the community. And we thought that numbers were the best way to tell the story. We had 10 strategic planning task force meetings over the last several months. We had 3 community events, evenings where our entire purpose was hearing from the community in different ways. We've had 3 full Board of Education briefings, meetings where we're giving you updates along the way from all the way back to January till tonight. We have we conducted some interviews early on. The superintendent said to me, could you go out and interview some key voices out in the district, in the community, and make sure that those are captured. We also ran focus groups, and the exact number I'm unsure of. It was well over 25, and these were done in the community events and in some early phase of focus groups done at the end of January and at the beginning of February. Those we had over 300 participants in those focus groups, and they represented a range of your community, from students to religious leaders to community leaders. These were exciting evenings. The task force gave up extra hours of its time, and people seemed to really appreciate being asked thoughtful questions. They appreciated having people listen, and they appreciated the opportunity to interact with other people around those questions and answers. We also briefed early on, we ran kind of a massive focus group, if you will, with the faculty and staff, where we asked them some rather big questions, and we used a survey instrument in real time to solicit feedback, and we received over 900 responses to that faculty and staff survey. And those were exceptionally insightful. They helped to tell us what the educators of the district thought were important, and also where the district should go. We have had 16 briefings, times where we brought to some groups some early iteration or advanced iteration, and these briefings went all the way through yesterday. And as I said earlier, we have not conducted a briefing or ran a meeting where we solicited feedback or insight where immediately following the work that we had done had not shifted. And I can report that even within the last 24 hours, there have been shifts in the document that we're showing to you based upon amazing feedback and insight that we gathered throughout the community. We have 4 other organizational reviews that were being conducted but in the district that we've paid attention to. We've either been briefed directly or we paid attention to briefings that these leaders and outside technical service providers provided to the board, and their insights were a major part of the needs assessment, capacity and coherence review, disproportionality study, special education study, and the facility study. So quite a bit of work, hours and hours and hours. And again, I want to give a lot of credit to the task force. There are a number of people who are now in on the call, a number of folks watching from home who are part of this task force. Thank you so much for all of your effort. There's no way we'd be in the position we are tonight without this amazing collection of leaders drawn from different parts of the community and different roles inside and outside the district. Thank you so much. So on behalf of the task force, I bring to you what we were joking a bit about version 11 or so of the strategic plan framework. The title that we've been working on is we knew had some energy about the future, and the one that we bring to you is Future Ready for All. A sense that we're moving towards a future that is big, it's dynamic, it's changing, and we're doing it for everybody. There's a sense that each and every child is a part of this future, and that represents the strategic plan for the coming 5 years. The mission statement that we bring to you is as follows. And as I was describing earlier, what we'll do is we'll talk about each of the components of the framework in isolation and create some opportunity for discussion and comment. And then we can come back to and have another conversation where we talk about all of them in concert with each other in the Gestalt. So the mission statement, after quite a bit of work, Norwalk Public Schools provides an excellent and equitable education so all students graduate future ready, civically responsible, globally engaged, and positive contributors to an ever-changing and diverse world. I would just underscore here that there are a number of ideas that were important to the task force and also were important to the many people who contributed to this. Equity has shown up as an important idea from the very beginning and a kind of resounding theme throughout all of the focus groups and interviews and of the task force, making sure that we're talking about all students, but also making sure that we're talking about all students in relationship to a big future. Again, that takes us back to the title, but this notion of making sure that we're not just getting students out of the system or getting them through the system and ready for the future in a rather big and broad way, with some civic responsibility, global engagement, and being positive contributors to the world. So I am going to pause there and see if there are any if there's any discussion that members of the board want to have, any comments, any suggestions. And if not, we'll move.
I just wanted to say just really quickly, Richard, what I really appreciate about this, a lot of it actually, because I think we're hitting so many important metrics for our students. But this phrase "future ready" I think is very important because it implies that may mean different things for different students, right? We don't expect everybody to do one track or the other track. We want our students to be as fulfilled as they possibly can in whatever makes them ready for their future. So I want to underscore that because I think it's sometimes we can get a little tunnel vision into what success means to the student.
Okay, so I will proceed to the next component. And that's going to take us, well, actually, I should say here, this is really the perfect time to pause. 2 meetings ago, the task force really wrangling with the relationship between a mission and a vision, thought it important that the vision statement, which is supposed to evoke an image of the future that we're trying to create if we do our mission well. And the task force said, let's get students' voices, even though students have been a part of this the entire way and have been contributing through focus groups and interviews. We are right now actively scheduling a session with 2 groups of students who were active participants in focus groups earlier in the process. We're going to bring them back into the room. We're going to do an overview of the framework. We're going to share with them some of the initial brainstorming that the task force has come up with around a vision statement. And we're going to ask them to help us craft that vision statement. So we'll be bringing that back to you in the future, but the task force was almost in perfect agreement that evening that this would be a great idea to get student voice because we wanted something that was compelling. We wanted something that was aspirational and not just for adults, but for the young people in the system. So this is going to be a little overwhelming as a slide. Forgive me, there's a lot of text, but there's a beautiful visual and a huge thank you to Brenda and the communications team for putting this together. So core values represent the cultural tenets of the organization, those qualities you want to imbue in the organization as you do the mission on behalf of the vision. They set the tone, they create the guardrails, they aspire us to live up to our better angels, and they try to discourage us from stepping out of the way. And we've wrestled with core values. Some of our biggest and most powerful conversations over the last several weeks have been, what do we stand for as value statements? We come to you with a collection of value statements assembled around this graphic, which is a bit of a prototype graphic. It might change a bit, but I will walk you around this. And I know you're working off different size screens, so pardon me as I read to you, and then we'll pause and receive your feedback and hear any suggestions. So I will begin up at if you imagine this circle as a clock face, we'll start at the 12. Toward the top, student potential. We provide access, opportunities, and supports so that all students can meet their promise and potential. Now I'll move around clockwise. Excellence, we strive for the highest level of achievement for our schools, students, staff, and community. Relationships, we foster constructive and meaningful connections among students, between students and educators, and with the larger school community. Integrity, we are honest, transparent, fiscally responsible, and committed to doing our best for all our students, families, and community. Coordinated services, we work collaboratively with families and community partners to coordinate learning opportunities, experiences, and wraparound support for all students. Continuous improvement, we pursue improvement through reflection and disciplined use of data and evidence in all we do. Creativity and innovation. We seek out new solutions in creative and flexible ways to prepare all students for an ever-changing future. Our people. We support all our faculty and staff through investing in learning, developing a trusting professional culture, and celebrating success. Diversity and inclusion. We embrace and nurture a diverse and inclusive community with individuals representing a variety of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. Equity. We ensure that each and every student in every neighborhood has access, opportunity, support, and encouragement to excel in all current and future endeavors. There is in this, again, this is the first cut in creating a visual. I just want to be very deliberate that we were not imagining equity as kind of the last core value, because in many ways it popped up to the top of every articulation. It was just where I chose to begin in the circle in terms of its relationship. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions or comments.
I guess this is Erica. We had chatted a little bit about adding some nod to technology, that we would continue to invest in the technology that kept our students at the forefront. Did you weave that into another part of this?
No, I so appreciate that. I think that it was the thinking of the task force that it lives in creativity and innovation as a value. It lives in continuous improvement. So I think that there was a sense that it was indeed there.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'm still going to work and see if I can figure out an acronym for all of these, because I feel like we can't.
That's a big word, sir. I hope you can do it. I think you
Maybe 2 words. Okay.
You might end up being Mary Poppins if you do that, finding a word that's hard. So that's just another, you can imagine this is why it was so amazing to have a visual that pulls this together, because the text itself can be a little overwhelming, but we have that as another articulation. And now I want to take us to the final artifact that we're sharing, and this really, in concert with the values and with the mission and ultimately with the vision, will help to define the most important work over the coming 5 years. So what will you prioritize, which will also answer the question for you, what will you deprioritize or not prioritize? Because any organization that prioritizes everything prioritizes nothing. And we know that highly effective organizations have a laser-like focus in what they're trying to do. And that's particularly challenging in districts, because our society has asked school districts to be all things to all communities, all people, all students. And so it's sometimes difficult to really hone in. The task force worked quite a bit in looking at the needs assessment and identifying categories that captured the most important work in relationship to the mission, in relationship to values, and relationship to what we imagine the students are going to come up with. And we came up with 5 strategic priorities. You can think of these strategic priorities. You can also think these as goal areas. Underneath each of these, we imagine in the coming weeks, we will be inserting specific strategies that will help tell the story of exactly what we will be doing, but that follows after we're in agreement on the strategic priorities. So the first strategic priority is future readiness. So future ready is really the anchor of, and the title, and you see it through everything here. We want to make sure we prepare all students so they're ready for further education, for career opportunities, and for globally engaged leadership. So all of those were important, and I think to the point made earlier that there's not, I think the task force and the community were all of the same mind, that there need to be multiple pathways, but the pathways need to lead to success. They need to lead to opportunity for young people. They shouldn't lead to closed doors at the end of their experience in the district. Equity as a priority, ensure equitable opportunities, facilities, experiences, and outcomes for all students. Excellence, achieve excellence in all aspects of our organization through effective systems, modern learning environments, and continuous improvement processes. Engagement, ensure all children, families, team members, and the community are informed, involved, and feel welcome in our schools. And last but not least, high quality instruction and support. Foster relevant and intellectually stimulating learning with targeted supports that produce social, emotional, and academic growth. So all 5 of those are critically important. We've wrestled with having more, and I think it took a lot of discipline of the task force to get it to where you could have all 5, all of the priorities on a single hand represented by a finger, and trying to so that we could hold on to them, so there weren't so many. I'm going to pause. One thing I will do, I will show you, because once again, the communications team pulled together at the final hour a great mock-up as a prototype of a potential visual. Again, future ready right in the middle, that first one, but a surrounding in the triangle of incredible importance. Equity right at the top. We're talking future ready for all. We're talking about excellence and engagement, all built on a solid foundation of great, inspiring, and engaging instruction with the right targeted support so that each and every child experiences success. So I'll pause there and ask for any comments, questions.
So if we can jump back a slide,
Yes.
the future readiness statement, I appreciate how you updated the mission statement to be broader. Is it possible to update it here as well? You know, I'm just going to continue on the feedback of not every student embarks on a career. It could just very simply be a job, and not every student is going to have a job, and success looks different than having a paid occupation. You know, a lot of special needs families will tell you that success is not represented necessarily in a job or a career or further education. It could be in a volunteer position, or just in leading a fulfilled adulthood. You know, so just something that is what you did in the mission statement is fantastic. If we could just pull it in here as well.
So I appreciate your pushing us. The last conversation we had, we brought back this feedback, and I think there were a number of people who were thinking about career opportunities as very broad, not a you're in the workforce getting a certain kind of professional job, that it was very broad. And I think that there was a little bit of maybe even a little bit of resistance positively of shifting this too much, but I'm open. I just want to make sure I capture from you exactly what you hope as an alternative, and see if the rest of the board's in agreement.
Yeah, in the traditional definition of career, it's an extended period. It's an extended commitment to a vertical path. There's some people who have 3 jobs that is what success means to them, to be able to put food on their children's plates and a roof over their head. And it is in no way tied to a singular track or career.
Would workplace opportunities
I think
work? I want to make sure that I'm not lowering the expectation, but also I think I understand exactly what you're trying to say. What was that work, or do other board members have alternative suggestions?
I think workplace, is certainly a little bit broader than career. It can mean, I think, different ways of thinking about it. Without wanting to, sort of over-engineer and get too wordy, I wonder, Erica, if a phrase like self-actualization covers some of what you're talking about.
even if we did career and workplace opportunities, yeah, I mean, we don't have to wordsmith it in this moment. I just want to make sure it's representative of.
Yeah, I think Erica's
Yeah.
sensitivity to those factors should definitely be noted, and I do recall, as Richard mentioned, just kind of some of the back and forth we had about it in the committee and group, and one suggestion, not to get too into wordsmithing, I would say is, to contributing members in their community. I think that captures it in many different ways, but is worth considering, because the examples that Erica shared, I think tap into a very true sentiment that's represented here. And it acknowledges how the definition changes amongst families and members as we go through these times. It's just an idea, but I do think it's worth assuring that we revisit it, to capture the idea within the sentiment within Erica's idea.
I appreciate all of that, and your comments actually helped us quite a bit with the mission statement. So we broadened that out, and we do have that sense of contributing in the mission statement. So we'll mark that, and at a very minimum, we've got workplace and career that broadens it, and hopefully it won't feel as if we're limiting, and that every child and every family can see their child in that statement and they don't feel locked out of that.
Thank
Any
you.
other suggestions or ideas, reactions? Okay, so any, just kind of stepping back from all of these, now you've seen, absent the vision statement, which we'll have students in the coming 14 days, once we get the actual date locked in, helping us craft that, and we can bring that back. But is there anything you want to discuss of the entire package of the title, the mission, the core values, and the 5 strategic priorities? So Superintendent, with that, what I'll do is I will move the presentation forward to the table of organization. You can tell me when you want me to share.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I just want to say it's a very tall order for a district like Norwalk, which celebrates and enjoys so much diversity, to come up with a strategic plan that is incorporating every child and every family. And I'm just grateful for the work that Connecticut Center for School Change has helped us get to this point, because I think we really do capture every child here.
Well, thank you. We have been honored, and I will deflect all of the positivity right back to the task force. It really was an amazing group of committed citizens and educators who really put the students of Norwalk first, every conversation, every day, and showed up every meeting. I think we probably, if we looked at participation across everybody, kind of had 90% attendance every single session, and it was only when there was a family commitment or something out of the unusual that required people to step away. So a huge thank you to the task force and to every single member of the community who showed up and participated in focus groups and completed surveys and showed up to interviews. We definitely could not have done this without the voice of Norwalk as a city.
Totally agree. So any further discussion from the board in terms of what was presented thus far? Suggestions? I don't know, Rich, if you want to go back to the diagram and any feedback on that piece, and the current layout of that component from the board would be great if we can get some feedback on this piece.
The task force talked, and the visuals, to be fair, really only emerged in the last couple of meetings. We talked about the use of symbols, and we also talked about some kind of graphic display, more like this, that might be suggestive of the relationship among them. Again, I think that for those folks who liked this one, Future Ready is right in the middle, and it harkens that title. And then it shows you that all these other pieces are critically important to achieve that. You can't just say that you're going to be future ready if you're not focused on equity, if you don't have an organization pursuing excellence, if you're not engaging the voices of the community, and if it's not built on a foundation of high quality instruction and support. But if you have suggestions on how we can make this better, we would love to hear it, because these kinds of visuals are important to telling the story of a strategic plan.
Can I just add in, Richard? I mean, this really resonated, and I think sometimes less is more. So when you have less verbiage, it really stands out. So, you see future ready right in the middle, excellence on the side, engagement, equity on top, and then high quality instruction and support, I think says it all and kind of captures what we're all about here in Norwalk. And if I could just go back, excuse me, briefly to the focus groups, when you were mentioning how many people we had the support. And when I hear that, and I hear 90%, right, attendance rate, everybody was just, the word that pops up to me is vested. Everybody within the community in Norwalk is really vested in the success of our students and making them, having them future ready, right, with the engagements and the excellence and equity and the high quality instruction. And, if you look at a keyword also here, support, making sure that we have the support and mechanisms to make sure that our students are successful is so critically important. And then having the backing and the support of our community as a whole, which we have in Norwalk. You have very vested parents and students and community members. And, when I think of Norwalk, that's what you think of. You think of families that are just in support of high quality education for all. And, I know we'll talk more about it, but, also the social emotional learning part of that as well. So we always look at academics and making sure that students are engaged. But we also have, especially during COVID, and I know I've mentioned this many times during meetings, but it's even more important now with learning loss for many of our students to make sure that they're able to catch up at some point and having those supports in place for our students because they've gone through a really rough time over the past year.
And maybe, Heidi, that should be a build in the, I jump back one slide. In the future readiness statement, something about social emotional readiness. I mean, there's so much written on how that sets you up to have positive workplace and family relationships and how important that is in building a holistic child that is ready for their future. And I don't think we touched on that here.
It's actually shows up towards the
Is it
bottom.
too?
It was something very important.
Oh, it's very, there it is.
Yeah, the
Okay.
community talked about it. The task force named it on almost the very first meeting. So we were trying to make sure that we were talking about that the kind of the outputs of the instruction and everything we do are broader than just they're academic, and they are also include this socio-emotional piece that's so critical.
Maybe we can also, as a suggestion, have that in bold, because I missed that too, Erica. So I see the high quality instruction and support, foster relevant, intellectually stimulating learning and targeted supports that produce social, emotional, and academic growth. But we have the academic piece. We talk a lot about that. We know how important that is. But to me, also, the social, emotional learning is also equally as important to that, because if we have children that are well and healthy and happy and engaged, we need that before we can even look at, academics is so important, but the social emotional piece is kind of in tandem with that as well.
Yeah, I was thinking if you're going to pull it into something that defines success in adulthood, and we're talking about, a percentage of our children who, are most, special needs population, that could be represented in personal development and social emotional development. And that's what defines, success as an adulthood or spiritual development. So, maybe that's, how that's worked into the statement.
Thank you. It was a really important conversation. I appreciate
Just
it.
to jump in on a very technical point here, Ralph, I think Sarah Lemieux is signed on, but she's not a panelist. If we can elevate her.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah. I'd like to give kudos to the task force. I think that a lot of hard work was done to wind up with 5 quality strategic priorities. Because once you get to a laundry list or a lot more than that, none of them feel important, right? That these are clearly will be a roadmap for what are the programs, what's the professional development, what are the goals that are going to be associated with these, make them more powerful when each of them as a standalone are powerful, rather than a long list of a checklist of things to get done. So I think there's some really powerful verbiage here. So kudos to the task force.
Is it okay if I jump in with one thing?
Please do.
The one thing that I didn't see in this smaller piece is a mention of creativity. And I feel like in all of these priorities, creativity is going to have to be a part of their execution, and also a part of what we're trying to impart to our students, for future readiness in particular, I think. And so I know it's in the values, but I feel like in our, I don't know, the word creativity is not in the shorter list.
Okay, I'm gonna make note of that. Thank you for that. But it definitely was innovation, creativity, and not just as one and the same, but a separate also, that those did emerge in the task force. And I think there was agreement that that was important. Any other thoughts before the superintendent moves us into the next part of the conversation?
Outcomes, do we have outcomes attached to our priorities?
Great question. Not yet. That's going to be part of the next step, where we now say, given that these are the priorities, what are the more precise strategies we're going to use, and what are the measures of success to allow us to monitor over time and allow us to understand where we are and where we want to be.
Because I almost would, and maybe this is out of the question, but just the way we have like the mission, you see the image of the future, I would love to have in the statements, because right now it just sounds like words. It sounds like feel good. Just maybe, 3 or 4 action words as far as outcomes. So, we're having equity, and just, a few words about why. What the outcome is for equity. We'd like to have equity because, and have something. I don't know if that's something we want to put right in the, with I think it was slide, you had 2 different slides. One was a visual and one was just the words. If you want to do that, or just have, something else that says, but we need some kind of outcome or some kind of action words. Or to me, it just feels like feel good things, and not a sense of urgency.
No, I think I understand what you're saying, and I think that what we're aspiring for is that when we have the next wave is coming to you, that for each of those broad categories, you're going to see more tangible action words, and a clear sense of what success would look like. And I'm hopeful, my hunch is that you'll start to see the whys articulated and a little bit more of that action that you're wanted. I appreciate your thought there, because I think that's where we're trying to get to.
Thank you.
So Superintendent, do you want me to move it along in terms of the slides?
Sure. So in order for us to be able to accomplish many of the priorities that have been set by the task force, part of the work that we have to do is really take a look at the current structure that we have in central office, and kind of think through some of the necessary organizational shifts that we need to take to ensure that we are able to meet the priorities that have been outlined by the task force. So Richard and I have spent a number of hours looking at different iterations of what the table of organization, particularly for the cabinet, should look like, so that the vision and expectations set forward by the task force can be fulfilled within the next few years. So I'm going to share with you kind of the cabinet frame of what the table of organization would look like given your approval. If we could go to the next slide. So one of the things that has resonated through the findings of the study is the importance of having a clear focus on equity and excellence, and really delineating that because we set up equitable processes that reduce the disproportionality outcomes that we might be currently seeing and we need to further address, it doesn't mean that we are sacrificing excellence. It means that we are enhancing and ensuring that excellence occurs throughout a system. In order for us to effectively do that, we want to make sure that we have an individual within our team that will support the work that we will be doing around equity and excellence. And particularly be someone that will support as well the assistant superintendents in their work to ensure that not only that there's a cohesive process by which we are interconnecting the work regardless of the department, but that everyone within the system understands that there's a clear focus and priority amongst us around excellence and ensuring that there's equity across the system. In order to do that, we have created a role called the Deputy Superintendent of Equity and Excellence that will work in tandem with myself, the superintendent, to ensure that the priorities set forward by the task force are fulfilled with a clear lens around looking at equity processes throughout the system and ensuring that all of the assistant superintendents supporting the work are in alignment with those priorities, but also setting clear expectations that this is not a piece of work that happens in silos. It's going to require the organization at large to engage in that process. Obviously, our chief financial officer will continue to remain the same because it's an essential element of the work that doesn't really fluctuate. The other piece that is really important for the district is the piece around communications. And we have designed a role called Chief of Staff and Communications primarily to focus the work around parent engagement and support. With that role, that person will also be responsible not only for the communication streams that we are accustomed to in terms of the press, setting out notices, keeping our webpage up to date, but also having a clear focus on parent engagement and community engagement. And this person will be overseeing the welcome center or the family welcome center that we're trying to create to streamline services, particularly around registration, special education, providing assessments upon entry for students depending on their diverse needs, offering a on-site clinic that will provide some of the initial healthcare needs for our families, and basically have one location where parents can acquire information and provide a kind of a centralized hub so that all parents have access to resources and information in the same way. Because one of the things that we heard through the process was that many parents felt that information was in silos or specific to schools, and that they weren't getting information holistically across the district. A perfect example of that is the magnet program application process. Because every school is running their own process, a lot of parents felt that unless they knew someone, they really were not well aware of what that opportunity looked like and what the application process would entail. So we want to make sure that from registration within also parent engagement opportunities and providing an information hub, that we have all those services in one place that parents can become familiar with and have easy access to. And that person will support and fulfill that role. In terms of the other roles, we also are going to have the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations. This person will work in tandem with the Chief Financial Officer in looking at the operations of the district, particularly around safety, health, facilities, so on and so forth, but also talk about engage in some of the business aspects of the work because of the nature of this particular role that requires facility maintenance and other factors that engage in business and financial administrations as well. This role, as well as the Deputy Superintendent of Equity and Excellence, will be roles that we will be posting jobs for, and we will be seeking for people to apply for these positions. Obviously, we've learned also through COVID the need for enhancing our technology on a continuous basis, developing the capacity of our personnel around the use of technology and different tools to enhance teaching and learning in the classroom, but beyond the classroom, enhance learning while students are at home and provide them with ample opportunities to have access to narrow the digital gap that currently exists. And for those of you who don't know, recently we were awarded the Verizon Innovation Grant that afforded every single student in 3 of our middle schools a one-to-one device that has broadband capabilities so that they have access at home beyond just the classroom. So we want to ensure that we continue to not only build our students' capacity in how to in very creative and innovative ways utilize technology, but also build the capacity of our team and our personnel so that they know how to most effectively utilize these tools in the context of the work. So Mr. Valencisi will continue supporting us in that role. And then we have the new role of the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. And in the Assistant Superintendent of Schools will have a really big responsibility, because one of the things that, based on my listening and learning conversations, that I heard a lot is that in many cases, some of the central office processes were happening in silos. And I heard a lot from our leaders that they were sometimes feeling that things were disconnected. So for us, it was going to be really important to integrate the services that are being provided, but most importantly, that this integration results in the enhancement of learning for all of our students, particularly students with specialized needs and multilingual learners that require very specific instructional strategies and practices that need to be incorporated not only in the service related content that is being provided, but in all aspects of the work. So the Assistant Superintendent of Schools will have a portfolio that would include specialized learning. It would include the work of the multilingual learner population, as well as working around the curriculum and professional development component, and also the leadership development. Because what we want to do is have people work in teams in a collaborative nature and making sure that student services are fully integrated. For the special education component of this portfolio, Ms. Yvette Gurevich, although she is retiring, has committed to work with us to transition the work and make sure that all of the services continue to happen in a fluid manner as we work to interconnect the processes that will bring the work together. We are working with the consultant that engaged in the special education study, as Dr. Lemons articulated, to merge and bridge the findings of that study with the equity project review, as well as the findings from the strategic planning process, to ensure that as we are designing the different components and bridging the work, we're taking into consideration the findings of all of the studies to ensure that our work is well interconnected and making sure that the needs of all students are being met in the most effective possible way. So this kind of gives you a scope of the shift. Obviously, there were a number of other chief roles that were eliminated, and we reduced the roles to 3 assistant superintendents and 1 deputy superintendent to really build a cohesive structure and making sure that the work is aligned and interconnected. And our expectation is going to be that these 3 assistant superintendents are working in tandem with one another and actively collaborating in the support of schools. One of the things that we're trying to build as a culture is that we are in service of schools. So the district's role is to service the schools so that they have what they need to effectively support our students. So one of the things that I'm hoping that through this interconnectiveness, we are able to streamline services so that our principals have the ability to do their work effectively, but also have the supports that they need to do it in the best possible manner. And that our teachers, paraeducators, and other personnel also continue to receive the training and support that they need so that they can effectively support the diverse student population that we have within our district. Rich, you could go to the next slide. So this chart just speaks to the elimination and the creation of new roles in order to most effectively align the services and support structures being provided across the system. And one of the things that I can say that we kept in mind as we engaged in this process is trying to keep the shift of the two tables of organization cost neutral. And we have managed to accomplish that because we wanted to make sure that as we were thinking of the redesign of the structure, that we were not adding additional cost to providing the best possible services to our students. You can go to the next. And finally, this is just a summary of the positions that were eliminated in terms of the chief role and the creation of the new deputy as well as assistant superintendent roles, and those roles that continue to remain the same within our organization. So just for the discussion, can you go, Rich, to the first slide that just shows the overarching? Thank you. I guess at this point, I'll open it up for the board to have conversation or questions.
I'll start. So Dr. Stray, I have to apologize because we've obviously, you and I have looked at this slide before and I did not bring this up earlier. Is there a possibility for you to consider, and I realize this is a long title, equity, excellence, and inclusion, just to recognize that inclusion really invites that culture of contribution, participation of all children?
So, it's funny that you say that because the name that we first started with was Deputy Superintendent of Equity and Inclusion. Oh. And then we were like going back and forth. I think that's a great suggestion and we can make the accommodation because we were going back and forth with the idea. and then we wound up like, okay, so let's keep it with excellence because we didn't want to overextend it. If you actually look at the list of the roles, you will see that in the original list, it had inclusion and in that excellence. And at the last minute, we were like, should we make it excellent? So I have no issue with doing that. I think that's a great suggestion. We can just do both.
That makes me feel better. I'm like, how did I miss this last time around? But it was different. Okay.
Because the last time around, it had inclusion. And then we were like, should we make it excellence because it encompasses everyone? But that's a great point.
Thank you.
Sarah, I think rose her hand.
I did raise my hand. I'm sorry if I missed this. I stepped away for a second, but I wanted to ask about just thinking about this in terms of the ladder of referral, right? Like, I think the increased collaboration and the lack of siloing that this is going to make possible is excellent. And I'm also just thinking about like clarity of roles and when things are escalated to whom they should be escalated to. So that's my question.
So it depends on the matter and what is being escalated. So initially, obviously, if it's a matter associated with a special education need, what do you mean in terms of? Are you talking about?
I just mean like in terms of. Like just like the basic idea of like job descriptions. Do you know what I mean? Like what domains will be under whose authority kind of thing. Okay. In particular, the assistant superintendent, I was listening, and also the deputy superintendent of equity and excellence and inclusion.
So the roles have all been written out and will be published once the board approves this
awesome.
Structure. And they will articulate the ladder of referral and who reports to who under that ladder of referral.
Got you.
Any other thoughts?
I think it's important, as we're looking at this right after looking at where we are with strategic planning, because you can clearly see how this organizational chart is tied to the priorities that we're thinking about setting. I think it's great to have a deputy superintendent of equity, excellence, and inclusion that really overrides all of the operations. Everything we do, we have to make that an integral part of the work. And I think elevating the role of communications does reflect how important it is for us to remain just consistently engaged with every single stakeholder. So I'm really, I think that's to use Sarah's point. We're breaking down silos here, we're streamlining the process and doing it in a cost neutral way, which I think is important.
Any final thoughts before we transition to the two action items? Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank the board for taking the time to listen in and for being active participants through this process. You really made the process really meaningful by being part of the process and helping us identify the areas of focus. I think Richard articulated it a number of times how appreciative we are of the different constituents that were supporting us through the design of the framework, and how incredible our principals, teachers, other personnel have been, because they've completed a full day of work and yet came with a lot of positivity and energy to engage in a very complex process for a number of hours throughout the past few months in the midst of the pandemic, because we're still in a pandemic. And despite that, our staff has accomplished the unimaginable, right? A lot of people were like, how are you going to be able to accomplish all the things you need to do under this current state of mind and situation, and also fulfill the task of making sure that the district has a clear path forward with a new strategic plan? And this was not possible without the support of the community, of all of you, and our incredible staff, our union leaders who have also been active participants in this conversation as well. Thank you to them. And all of those individuals, particularly our students who are quite opinionated and gave us a lot of great perspectives in terms of how we need to think about the work. I have to say, on a monthly basis, they are the highlight of my month in many cases when I engage in conversation with them, and they provide me really insightful feedback in terms of how we can do the work better. And then they engage every chief in the district office with their inquiries, because then I have them talk to all members of cabinet to further engage in their asks. So thank you to the cabinet and everyone else that has played an integral role in this work, and for the support that we've received to get to this point. We still have work to do, but I think we are on the right path ahead, and the future of Norwalk is very bright based on the great work that has happened thus far. Our focus is on making sure that all students succeed, and when we say all, we mean all. So thank you, and now I'll turn it over to our chair to move us forward to the action items.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shreya. Yes, so we do have these two action items on the agenda tonight. The first is the approval of the strategic plan framework, and I do appreciate Dr. Lemons reminding us that this is a very sort of general framework that will help us create more specific outcome-driven goals for this specific year and the years to come. First, we'll move it to the floor, if I can get such a motion. Erica moves it. Any second? Godfrey, thank you. We've been able to have some discussion and back and forth about it already, but I do want to open it up for if there's any other comments or questions or issues that people want to raise.
I'd like to thank Richard Lemons. We've talked about lots of hours, but it's been many months and details and like you said, the long days. There's been some of us that have come in, with just tired, negativity from work, things like that have drawn us down. But you have always started those meetings with getting us uplifted and awake and pushing us out of our comfort, with questions and always reminding us that we are here in a safe zone to answer, to be able to give you the good, the real information and how the community feels and what's important to Norwalk Public Schools. So thank you for that.
I just also want to take time to appreciate the community leaders and school leaders that were involved, throughout the whole process, the evidence of they're in this with us, just seeing some deliverables every Thursday for the first half of the year, then breaking it to every other Thursday. The level of commitment and the value of significant input shared, I so much appreciate. And my increased appreciation for all the school leaders that were involved in the process. I hope tonight you get some rest and some sleep, but I just want to take time to acknowledge that and thank you all for that.
Absolutely. And I just want to pick up on one thing Dr. Estrella said, which is, contrary to some signs, we are still in a pandemic, and I don't really have the words to describe how a new superintendent comes into a new district in this particular context, having to really keep us all safe and keep this train on the tracks, and go through this incredibly thorough strategic planning process to make sure that we have guideposts to take us into the future. It's a huge order, and it deserves acknowledgement, because if people didn't realize that we're still in a pandemic, they may not have believed it from seeing superintendent and her team work through it. So looking forward to brighter days ahead, but just acknowledging that we had to work through some challenging times. If there's no other discussion, we do have a motion on the table, and I wonder if we might want to amend it to say that we will approve this pending the tweak about career opportunities.
Mhm.
I think that was the one.
There were two
and,
suggestions, I
and,
think.
and highlighting creativity, highlighting social emotional learning
Mhm.
and creativity. Those are the three things that I think we all agreed on. We don't need to actually get the language correct tonight, but I think if we can approve it with those particular items to finesse, we can continue to move forward. Erica?
Aye.
Yeah, I thought we were just in the I stage. Sorry.
Oh, I think I made an amendment, so I don't know if that amendment has to be seconded.
Okay.
Okay, so Erica seconds it.
Yep.
Yes, unless there's any further discussion, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Fantastic. Onward ahead. And that takes us to the second action item on the agenda tonight, which is approval of the new table of organization. Again, if we can get a motion to get it to discussion. Diana, thank you. Any second? Godfrey, thank you. Again, I think we've talked about how this new org chart really follows in response to the strategic priorities that we've just approved. Makes a lot of sense to me. And again, I appreciate the intentional effort of paying attention to the cost of it as well. Not that that was the number one priority, because this is an investment, but it's also helpful from a fiscal standpoint. Seeing or hearing no other discussion.
You know what, I have a question.
Oh,
Dr.
yes.
Estrella, how does the follow-up to principals and teachers, what happens from here? Like, do you do a tour to talk about this, just to make sure that everybody understands?
So the principals and the educators, we had an initial round of information before we had this public discussion yesterday. So we wanted to make sure, one of the things that we have done this year to ensure that the staff as well as our principals don't find out at the board meeting what's going on, we have a before the board meeting discussion, particularly with the principals as well as the staff at large. So we had an additional discussion yesterday where Dr. Lemons presented not only to the principals, but also to all of our educators and central office staff already. And we will continue the dialogue as we continue to refine the work. We will also have committees organized to work on the more finite details of the work for the next few weeks. We have already initiated a conversation with Dr. Lauren Katzman, as well as Dr. Fergus, and we started to, and Dr. Lemons, of course, and we started to talk about how to design the priorities for year one. We will be having additional dialogue around this work, and we're also planning the professional development for principals during the summer so that we can effectively support them in being able to roll out the new expectations come September as well.
Great. And just for the families at home that are part of the special education community, I know there's been a lot of discussion about everything rolling up into curriculum and how we are going to cover that. And just to reiterate who Dr. Katzman is, she worked with us on the comprehensive special education review, and she's contributing now to the priorities.
And one of the things that we've started conversations about is having a support plan in conjunction with her team for the next year, so that we can really scaffold the recommendations in a really effective way. And like I said, Ms. Gurovich is going to be working with us on a consulting basis to help with that transition process as well. So we're really appreciative of her being able to work with us, although she has retired or almost retired. So thank you.
Thanks, Yvette. And as a follow-up to that, Dr. Estrella, I know there are some central office positions that are being phased out and new positions that are being phased in. Is the idea to have any open positions filled by the new fiscal year, or are we kind of posting them immediately?
We're posting them immediately. Before the end of this week, all of the job postings will be up and available for folks to apply. We're encouraging internal staff to really look at these opportunities and take advantage of what is being offered, because we want to try to also elevate from within. And we're excited to see who takes the leap and tries to apply to some of these opportunities that we currently have.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion?
Colin, the MOU, are you gonna set that as an action item, or? Did Colin freeze?
Sorry, I think I did freeze. Can you hear me?
I could hear you now.
Okay, I just turned my video off. Yeah, so the MOU for the new table of organization.
Yes, and we're still in conversation with NASA. We're almost like we just have some finite details, but I think we're in a good place.
Try this again. Okay. Yes, I believe that's what we're about to vote on.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So if there's any other, if there's no more discussion or comments, I will call it to a vote. All in favor of approving this MOU for a new table of organization, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Okay, great. I'm just really looking forward to building on this really great foundation. I think we've got a great direction for our school system and excellent leadership, if I may say so myself. Believe that was the only other item on the business agenda, and I did not receive any public comments via email. Ralph, are there any?
Currently, I don't have anybody with their hands up. If anybody is looking to make any public comments, please raise your hand. No, I think we're good, Colin.
Okay.
Colin, can I do a board member announcement?
You absolutely may.
Okay, so I have an athletic liaison announcement. The FCX tournament starts this Friday with baseball and softball. Track competes on Monday. Lacrosse teams face off on Saturday, and registration for fall sports have opened. And we have sent out communications to our middle schools, including All Saints. And Jeff Thompson of the Norwalk River Rowing Association has started early registration for a summer-long rowing program. And our NJROTC is attempting to get their cadets involved in that, as well as the Air Force ROTC. So very exciting that rowing is being added into the mix. Sorry, I just switched my camera position. I didn't realize I was on glow there.
Excellent.
And that's it.
Thank you for those updates, Erica. That's really exciting.
Yeah, love that rowing is in there now.
I'm excited about that. We're gonna get some Olympians.
Yeah.
And college scholarships.
Yeah.
And before we do close out, I want to just open it up for if there are any other board members with any announcements. Happy to have them.
I have a few announcements, Colin. Just quick updates from our partner with Norwalk Acts. Community Day Fair will be held this Saturday, the 22nd, from 11 to 2 at Ryan Park, with the focus on mental health. The Youth Town Hall, our next scheduled one, is May 26th, with the focus on mental health. Experience of our high school students and all adults in the community are encouraged to listen and attend. Norwalk Act's next scheduled convening is on June 15th from 9 to 11. The focus will be on community engagement. Norwalk Acts will apply with PTEC for a Governor FAFSA completion challenge and is currently on track to potentially win the top prize to increase FAFSA completion. Norwalk Acts Board of Ed in the city have co-authored a letter to the governor urging him to pass the Appropriations Committee proposed budget, which includes the ECS funding we advocated for in the previous session. Also, Norwalk Acts has made an update on our enrollment dashboard for the community to see as well. And last but not least, separate from Norwalk Acts, I wanted to make sure to take time out to give a special shout out to my colleague, Sherelle Harris, just acknowledging her role as Norwalk Public Library Executive Director. So if we can put our hands together and do a pretty loud yay for Sherelle.
Go, Sherelle.
That's it.
Woo!
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Godfrey, and congratulations, Sherelle.
Yep.
It's great news from the Newark Public Library.
I think Cheryl froze.
I think she froze.
Oh,
Oh, there
there
she
she
is.
Ah,
Oh no.
yes.
She's muted. Sherelle, I think you're muted.
We were just saying congratulations.
Yeah, she's muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. We need to do it again because she
Thumbs
didn't
up,
hear us.
right? Colleen, can I just add one thing? Dr. Estrella, can you mention tonight, I know we've got some time, we've got like almost a month, but some of our graduations, you know, or outdoor graduations and things that are coming up within the next month, which is really exciting. We're in a much different place now than we were last year at this time.
Yeah. So one of the things, before I go into it, Brenda, can you pull
Okay.
out the dates for the graduations really quick? But one of the things I want to mention to parents, some parents would like to have the graduations all combined with all students. And I think there's been a lot of confusion between the state guidance of reopening for the state at large versus the guidance specifically for schools. And we're following very different guidance in terms of what we can do in schools versus what the state at large is allowed to do. As a result of that, we got very specific guidance from the state for prom and graduation that we need to follow. And part of the guidance is to limit the size of the cohort that will be graduated at one time. That is why we reduced it and created 2 separate sections rather than one big graduation, because we want to still maintain the social distancing guidelines and protocols that the state has set forward for us specifically in schools. And I just want to reiterate that because I have received some emails today where parents were requesting for one graduation, and unfortunately we cannot do that at this time. Our goal is that next year we will be able to do that, but presently, given the guidance that we have, we are unable to. The positive news is that the cases in Norwalk continue to dwindle down. It's evident that the vaccinations have been working effectively. I want to just remind parents that we are going to host a number of clinics for our students 12 to 15 that they should take advantage. And if our seniors as well as our older students have not taken advantage of the opportunity, please try to do so if something you feel comfortable doing, because we are hosting a number of clinics to really facilitate this process. And the numbers are showing, even in terms of transmission rates in the school buildings, we've seen a significant decline. And things look very promising for September. With that, Brenda, can you talk about the dates of the middle school and high school graduations, please?
Sure. So we have the Center for Global Studies graduating on Friday, June 11th. Wednesday, June 16th is the middle school promotion ceremonies. Nathan Hale and Roten will be at the Brian McMahon Field at 5 o'clock. West Rocks and Ponus Ridge will be at 7:30. Actually, I got that wrong. It's Nathan Hale at Norwalk High, Roten at Brian McMahon. So each middle school will graduate at their feeder school field on a staggered schedule. So Nathan Hale and Roten at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, June 16th, West Rocks and Ponus at 7:30 on Wednesday, June 16th. And then on Thursday, the 17th, it's Norwalk High and P-Tech on the field at the Norwalk High School building at 5 and 7:30 p.m. to give people time to clear out and the other group to load in. And then Friday, June 18th will be Brian McMahon High School at 5 and 7:30 as well. And all the schools, I think, have those posted, and we'll make sure that they're on our district calendar as well.
Good. One quick question, Brendan, I haven't looked. Do we have that posted on our website, the graduations?
I will double check and make sure that they are posted. I think they are, but I will double check and make sure the dates are, the times are correct, so.
Okay, that would be great. And then just one other final thought. We usually have some kind of police presence or security just for traffic issues, just to make sure that, especially for some of the graduations, the 5 and 7:30, will we be having that again this year as well, just to make it a little bit more seamless and easier for our parents that are driving in?
Joe Rios has already reached out to the Norwalk
Great.
Police Department to talk about that. So,
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
and those dates did go out in our last newsletter as well. So,
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, any other board member announcements? All right, with that in mind, I'd like to thank everybody for a very productive meeting and welcome a motion to adjourn. Going once to Heidi, thank you. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thanks thanks everybody tonight. Have a good night, stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
Richard, and everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.